I never thought a single conversation could change the course of my life, but that night proved me wrong. My name is Claire, I'm 32, and I used to believe I had everything under control. I thought I knew how love worked, how relationships were supposed to unfold. I had been seeing Mark for almost 3 years. We were comfortable, predictable, the kind of couple people envied in passing but didn't really notice up close. He was attentive, kind, always willing to compromise. I, on the other hand, had a life mapped out in my head: career, travels, freedom, maybe a family one day, but only on my terms. I wasn't one to tie myself down emotionally, and Mark, well, he never seemed to mind. Or at least that's what I told myself. The evening started like any other Friday. We went for dinner at that little Italian place near my apartment, the one with dim lights and endless breadsticks. Conversation was easy, laughter came naturally. Everything was perfect, or at least it seemed perfect to me. Mark reached across the table, holding my hand, and said something that made my stomach tighten in a way I hadn't felt before. "Claire, do you see a future with me?" His voice was calm, almost vulnerable, the kind that doesn't demand an answer but hopes for honesty. I froze for a moment, the words hanging between us like a heavy curtain. I could feel the tension build, his eyes searching mine for something I wasn't ready to give. And then, without thinking, without pausing, I said it: "You were never part of the plan." The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't mean to hurt him, not in that instant. It was my truth, blunt and raw, the kind that cuts deeper than any lie. I watched as his hand slipped from mine, the warmth of his touch gone in an instant. He blinked, once, twice, as if trying to process what he had just heard. His calm demeanor faltered for a fraction of a second, enough to make me realize I had crossed a line I couldn't take back. "Claire," he started, but he didn't finish. He put his fork down, his appetite completely vanished, and he stared at me with an intensity that made my chest ache. I laughed nervously, trying to lighten the moment. "I didn't mean it like that. I trailed off, realizing that there was no softening those words now. He shook his head slightly, a sad, almost disappointed smile forming. "It's not about how you meant it," he said quietly. "It's about how it landed." That simple phrase hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time thinking I was in control, that I could navigate every emotional nuance with ease, but Mark's silence was a mirror reflecting my own selfishness back at me. We left the restaurant in tense silence. The night air was cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the restaurant, and I felt every inch of distance growing between us. I tried to make small talk, asked him about work, the traffic, anything to fill the void, but he only answered with monosyllables. The city lights blurred past the car window, and with every passing moment, I could feel the reality sinking in. I had pushed too far, and this wasn't a joke, not even a little. I had made him feel like he didn't belong in my carefully curated life, and the truth was, he had every right to feel that way. When we reached my apartment, he didn't move immediately. He sat in the car, his hands clasped together, staring at the dashboard. I realized then that the future I had dismissed, the one he had quietly hoped for, was slipping through our fingers. "Claire," he said finally, his voice breaking just enough to show the vulnerability he had been holding back, "why do you keep saying things that push me away?" I opened my mouth to reply, but the words caught in my throat. There was no excuse, no clever line to smooth over the damage I had done. I had painted a picture where he was never meant to be, and now I was forced to live with the consequence of that truth. He got out of the car without a word, and I watched him walk to the door, the space between us feeling insurmountable. I wanted to call him back, to explain, to apologize, but something in his posture, the finality in his step, told me this wasn't about words anymore. This was about respect, about the acknowledgement that actions and words carry weight far beyond the moment they're spoken. I stood frozen, watching the silhouette of the man I cared for disappear into the night, realizing too late that my plan, my life, my freedom had blindsided the very person who had been patient enough to love me despite my flaws.